Welcome to Today in Eve. It is March 30th, 2020. Today we had some details on the moon update, I believe. And we saw clear skies last night, so we'll talk about that. There's a marathon for those shows. There's 3 of them, I believe, and a 4th coming. And also there's a trailer out that we keep getting teased about. It's supposed to be amazing, so we're hoping to see that at some point. But first, let me just say who's in here. So we have Arya, Caleb, and Spod, who are with TIS, and then guest Villy. And we have another friend in here at Landola. Landala, jeez, I get it right.
You can just go with Pox, that's fine.
Pox, okay. Anyway, Caleb, what's going on with minerals? What do you guys want to say about that?
Well, we got the early version of what was going to change with the moons, and everyone's commenting on that. And then, of course, we had Ratati on Push to Talk this Saturday, and I think was it before or in the late part of the show, we were talking about the fact that there was kind of like a workaround. People were still able to get access to minerals using missions and anomalies, right? Combat anomalies. And it hadn't been mentioned. And then today, when I woke up and I saw the Devblog, it's like first 2 parts was, nope, this is now nerfed too. There's no workaround anymore. So this is just going to be cosmetic roids. So that was a little bit of a smack in the face to people that thought that they were going to be able to take advantage of that.
Well, that's right. We didn't. I mean, it's we haven't been on since you interviewed Ratati on Push to Talk.
Exactly.
Why don't we start there? Like, how did that go? Describe what happened, something behind the scenes, whatever, and then we'll talk about patch notes 2020.
Well, of course, we started with doing what you actually mentioned on the Talking and Station show, because apparently Goodfellow was a little bit under the weather and might actually have caught the nice corona thing. So we started with the joke of putting him in quarantine a few feet away from the rest of us on the video feed. And then we had a little bit of chit-chat back and forth before we actually launched. And of course, Goodfellow didn't get to say much because it was just one big marathon show of trying to pick the brain of Ratati and get him to say a little bit more about the ideas and get him to dig deeper than he did in the other interviews. And I do think that we succeeded in that. And we kind of got what we wanted in the form of he is very much on the same page as at least someone like myself and Dirk McGurk, and almost excessively economy a lot more and faster than I actually expected. And we also got to talk to him and ask him about what is the philosophy behind the way that they actually rolled out these changes. And they're very much focused on bringing back the whole distribution difference when it comes to resources. They want these balance of trade things to be emergent again. So you can't necessarily be as self-sufficient as you have been in the past. So very, very exciting session. And I suggest that people that are really interested in those details go and check it out.
So Caleb, we have you and Push to Talk to blame for removing our workaround of mining and anomalies.
Well, not entirely, because I'm pretty sure that that's not something that they could have gone in and just changed in a day or two. So I don't think we're guilty. I think it's the same with us claiming that that it was Push to Talk that got CCP to announce that they had a new ecologist. I don't think that's true, because apparently that was internally announced back in, did they say September or October? Because we actually asked them about that, because he was named a ecosystem scientist pretty much the day after we begged for it, or McLeod mentioned that that's what we needed in the game. So I don't think we're not that good at prophecy or controlling anything. We just like to think so.
So I got
Today was a bit of a weird surprise that nobody really expected them to drop the patch today.
No, it was supposed to be tomorrow, right? Usually.
Well, I just kind of have a quick question of like the high sec platforms and that kind of thing. How, like, what are they going to do? Are they just going to actually have these moon materials available in small quantities in high sec, or what's happening to those platforms?
I've seen a few screenshots of people planning out their moon pools where it tells you the estimated value, and it's a absolute shadow of its former self. They did say that they're going to potentially buff the value of R4s by increasing their usage in blueprints. Whether or not that will truly bring the especially high sec moons back to anywhere near their pre-patch value is something that you need a crystal ball for.
We have to take into account that the whole behavioral economics is going to come into effect, right? Because people already mentioned that, oh, then they're going to stop their moon mining. It's not worth it. And when they do that, they naturally create a glut, right? They create scarcity by actually shutting them down. This is the whole point of why moon mining is such a brilliant design from CCP's side, that the availability of material is going to be based on player activity. So it's already kind of proving itself. It's going to land at a spot where it's really where what you want out of it and how much you expect as a return of your investment. So those things are going to change. But as we talked about with Lich earlier, these changes are very much things that add these dependencies. This is also why I'm hoping to see fleet mining become king again instead of this solo stuff with Rorquals, which I've always been opposed to. Then you will start seeing things like protection and defense being valuable again, even in smaller stuff, so sub cap stuff. And they will actually then be able to increase the profitability of the miners then operating, and then that will mean that they can get the cut of the profit that they generate by defending someone.
Do you guys talk to anybody that's like I'm kind of interested in high sec just because I thought it was interesting that there was some of this moon infrastructure. Do you guys talk to anybody that's engaged in any of that? Has it been kind of a little bit of a conflict driver for those systems that have the moons?
Are you talking about high sec moons in the past?
Yeah, like after the changes where they had to put platforms out there, and they've been doing the
Well,
some
one
concentrated
of
mining.
the one of the huge differences this patch will make is normalizing the values of high sec moons. They're all now pretty much worth the same, whereas before you'd have one that only had Feldspar and Scordite versus one that had Arcanor and Spodumane.
Right.
So there's a huge value difference there, and that was somewhat of a conflict driver. I know myself, I've had my group contracted to take down a few high sec citadels because somebody else wanted that particular moon because it's a high value, low risk mining operation essentially. So yeah, you're right. That was a conflict driver that is arguably lost.
Well, they're changing the way that they want to handle kind of like uh, what do you call it, citadels that are being put offline and that kind of thing. I would think that that's going to have a lot of um, more effect in these smaller, like we're talking about, like I'm talking about, at least the high sec low sec stuff on what they implement is going to really, you're going to have to build in all of that when you figure out, okay, well, I want to put down this mining platform. If there are times where it's actually not profitable for me to actually frack this, then I'm going to have a carrying cost until it is.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of offline ones. It depends on whether people are willing to take the bet of particularly the R4 change, bringing back the value. At the moment, they do make more money than the fuel does. So you're not actually making a loss on fuel, but that's only if you're assuming you mine everything, 100% fuel. So 100% of the field gets mined, but then you've got the problem of the ISK per hour for those people individually mining is actually lower than belts. So
Right.
I don't see that many high sec moons continuing.
But some
Whether
of
they get
the
pulled down or not is another question.
Right. Some of the issue though in those systems especially is that you will be out of, like, the system will get farmed out in the day. So I mean it extends. It's kind of like a complementary, system to what's already out there. And I mean, these have already been systems because, from what I understand, it's only 0.5s that actually have them.
Yep.
So these have already been systems that have already had always had a lot of conflict when it comes to like code and that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I haven't I haven't been in the client for a while, so and I'm always just interested because that kind of like lower level ecosystem is just such a different space than kind of what's going out in null, and I'm always kind of a little bit weary of like when they make changes that might be more null focused than some of the stuff that's actually been added to where most people when it comes to hours actually end up playing the game.
But it's back to the fact that it will seesaw, right? You're going to get that effect back in the game instead of this flat out sucking on all the faucets. Now people will move around and change their behavior based on profitability. And as they shut one thing down and shift to another, then you're going to get scarcity in one and abundance in the other. So this is the way it used to be. This is a feature. It's supposed to work like this.
Well, one of the questions for me is, is this them trying to pull back on some of the easy access wealth that high-sec moons in particular brought? Because it's high-sec mining to that sort of profitability and level has never been a thing until about 18 months ago when it was introduced, and then have they decided that that wasn't the right thing to do, that they don't like it? Why has it been hit so hard in particular?
Because they want to incentivize, or rather, I think they want an opportunity to change something like the Rorqual in a way that makes sense without everyone saying that, well, you can't change my Rorqual. If it gets followed as it looks like it's supposed to end up being, this is about squeezing the faucet so you change your cup size.
Yeah. Well, I was always interested in the high sec side anyway because it was outside of the Rorqual kind of meta that was becoming the standard out there. So that or like out in null or outside of anywhere that you could actually use the capital ship. So that's just why I'm like, well, I mean, is this going to make it to where they just don't have any because it's not going to be profitable ever because there's all kinds of sources of places that you can get the minerals that you can get out of those moon mines. That was what I was wondering. It's just like, is this going to destroy like an actual like ecosystem that may be getting those more industrial-ish types, or at least a corporation that has a good industrial type base, kind of having that first step to be able to become a larger entity, to be able to maybe at some point get out into more player controlled space. Is that kind of gonna just disappear?
If you look at exactly what they're trying to hit and how they did it, the thing is about nerfing self-sufficiency and bringing back the necessity of exchange, right? You have to actually source these things in different locations, which will mean that the local resource is going to be extremely valuable to the adjacent dependencies, right? So something like titanium is going to be fairly scarce and difficult to get proper amounts and proper volumes. So this will bring back the titanium is king in high sec as it was in the past, because it's going to be something that you could say new players or people that prefer safety will go for, but it's not. They're not going to be the major earners. They're just going to be able to earn more than they did proportionally in the past.
And how about so we've been kind of talking about the people that were using the platforms. What about the groups like that are kind of the 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 carnivore animals in this kind of environment, like I'm trying to think of like Marmite and those kind of guys. Like, I don't know what kind of interactions they had while this was what was in place. Do you know anything about that, Gil?
Uh, I would just say generally they should be getting more food on the table, potentially. Then it's just a question of, is there going to be a nerf to that at some point?
I think I see where you're going, especially someone that would have traditionally war decked these kind of mining groups. They might find that harder as their moons come down. So there's less targets opportunity. There's less groups that are running structures in that sense, because I imagine most of them will return to belts and then start working out of other people's structures or stations again, which will reduce their exposure. So,
but it will also bring more softer targets into space, right?
I don't think the targets necessarily change, but one small sort of strange thought for me that I think is a sad loss is you have the organization. You would know that on Saturday our Arcanor and Spodgermain moon pops, so everyone turns up at 6 o'clock on Saturday and mines that particular moon because everyone's waiting. But now all you've got, especially in high second wormholes, you know that on Saturday you might have a moon, but it's not worth touching. So you just have the continuous drudgery of hitting belts, which is less sort of inspiring to organize, if you could say it that way.
So with the changes with I'm sorry, like we have this big mineral glut with what was going on with the Rorquals. So as they're kind of changing that situation, I mean, is this just going to be a short-term thing to where people are actually going to be able to return to it because the profitability is going to come up after that glut's kind of grinded through?
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
So it's going to
the real
take
answer.
It's going to take a little bit of time, because if you have a moon that's already fracking right now, you're operating with the old metrics. It's only for new fracks after today, or starting today, that will no longer have these minerals. Additionally, going to an asteroid-based system, we still have time zone dominance. So one of the things you can do with moons is you can time your moon to come out in your most favorable time zone. But if you're relying on belts only respawn when the servers go down. So you still have those that are logged in the server first after reset will have the opportunity to mine the belts. Those that are later in the day, especially as you go to across the globe to the US, might see less minerals available.
And I would not necessarily bet on that mechanic staying in the game forever, to be honest, because it's one of those, okay, when it comes to respawn times for belts, right, it's something that we've talked with CCP about pretty much forever, because it was an issue, and you had the time zone problem where people would wake up and everything would have just been removed because it basically comes back at downtime. So I would suspect that they are very much focused on going in and figuring out where to actually fix that code, because historically they didn't know exactly where that was, or spaghetti code, something. We've asked a few times and they actually said, we don't really know how to do this in a way that won't actually break the entire thing. But now they might actually be motivated to go in and fix that stuff.
Yeah, I've already heard reports of within an hour or two of downtime, all the high sec belts being stripped of Veldspar. So someone else out there has figured it out and is already on it.
The NPCs do a bit of damage now, don't they? I'm not a miner, never have mined, but I've heard of miners whining about the new NPC miners. They can trash belts. So if you're not, um, if you're not getting on after the server spawns, like say you're an American and you're West Coast, by the time West Coast comes down for mining, the NPCs have destroyed all the belts.
Well, they did actually subtly, in about a week ago, in one of the patches. One of the side notes was that they've reduced. I can't remember the exact details, but the veracity of the NPC miners has been reduced a lot. So that's hopefully not so much of a problem anymore. I've not heard it mentioned, but it may well still be quite a
The
problem.
biggest problem, I mean, I know nothing about mining, but one thing that's a glaring flaw, as the other guy said, is the belts spawn at the same time every day, and it's
Yeah.
at server restart. Like, that's a joke. That is like that. Why is that being allowed to continue? Because who's optimal for that then? So like that's 12 p.m. So you're talking
Aussies.
that's ideal for China, maybe? Like that's like China Korea times ideal. That's their like game time, isn't it?
I think that was the joke back in the day, that it would have been stripped out by China and Aussies when the rest of us woke up.
Well, Side question: what happened to belts when they did that test of no downtime? Did they just leave them empty?
I didn't have eyes on that, so I actually don't know. But I remember asking.
Yeah, that's a thought. 'Cause maybe there is a solution in the works for
And I
such a
think
thing. It's a genuine problem.
I think we actually have somebody in Twitch chat that's talking about maybe yields for today. His name's Kiramancer. He's talking about Chromite was supposed to still have Mex and Pyrite, but only gives hydrocarbons 10 units and chromium 40 units. I don't know. Maybe they're having problems even
Your
converting over.
current frac is the old system. It's going to be
Oh,
from your next frac, and they also mentioned that in the Devblog.
okay. So Kiramancer, that's your answer. It sounds like you were just on an old frac, so new frac should have the new stuff.
Now the actual item itself has changed, regardless of whether you're fracking or not. The ore itself has changed fundamentally. So it didn't. If you started a pool last week and it's due to end soon, it would still have the standard ores in it. But the moon ore itself no longer has the minerals. I think what Kuro is mentioning is there might be a typo in that one of the moon ores that was supposed to retain some of its minerals accidentally didn't. So it could just be a typo on their part, to be fair.
Right. So what Kiramancer mentions is that, and that's the difference between ore that's being spawned and reprocessing. The reprocessing changes went in effect right away. So if you have moon goo ore and you go to reprocess it, you're not going to get those minerals anymore.
So
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
couldn't stockpile.
And that would be the same for people hoarding. I was about to say the same. So if you've hoarded Mingu, which is going to be pretty rare compared to breaking it down, now if you reprocess it, you're not going to get. You're going to get what they say is in it now, not what was in it.
You should have reprocessed that last week.
I see. The reason there's no actual typo. Mexilon and Pyrite were intentionally removed from Chromite. Chromite is an R8, not an R4. Only the R4s kept their Mexilon and Pyrite
Oh, there you go.
because it contains hydrocarbons and a small amount of chromium. So it's not a very base low level moon ore. It's not available in 0.5 or in wormholes. It's a low sec / null sec.
So I know before the stream we were kind of talking about supply chains and caravanning and some of this stuff. Like with this change, excuse me, does it fundamentally change much except for trade activity and hauling for things like jump raiders and
We should get the price differential between locations, which is going to massively change the incentive for that. It's just the problem with it is that it's still bulky, so there's not that much value to be gained from shipping it.
I think something we need to point out again that people I don't think have necessarily realised or heard. But one of the smaller subnotes of the patch notes that came out today is that mineable asteroids in both exploration sites and mission sites have been removed. Not entirely. There will still be some around, but the quantity of them is gone.
I've got to say, I remember back in the day, having those little pockets to mine when I was first playing the game, and now those are going away. That's kind of, that's just a sentimental moment for me.
There was a few missions, like there was a couple of rare missions. Like I think some of the level 5 missions actually were really, really worth mining. Like you got some really good ores in some of them. But I never did it. But I heard other people did. Like if they really got this like mission, they're like, "Oh yeah, it's a real bad one for the rats and that." But like once you kill the rats, the mining in it, it's really, really good.
I think that's probably like a weird side effect that they didn't intend for people to do, and they're obviously going back on that now, especially as it was counter to the desire to remove massive amounts of rocks for rorquals to munch on.
Yeah, that was it. They were big rocks, apparently. That somebody said. I have no idea about mining, but I just remember that being a thing.
Well, it's all about closing the loopholes, I suppose, and that's just another one to close. What was the other subject matter listed at the start of the show? I can't remember.
We should talk about the fact that Ian Chisholm was on CCP stream this Sunday, and they did a marathon of Clear Skies. So basically, they were showing Clear Skies 1, 2, and 3, and interviewing him in between each episode. And then, of course, the big tease was at the end, where he came out and actually announced he is now working on Clear Skies 4 on a completely new engine. So the actual teaser that they showed gave the lead character a new face, because, of course, he's not using the same machinery platform that he did in the past. What's that game?
Half-Life.
Yeah, he was using Half-Life models. So now he's actually building the models himself. So we've got new faces on the characters, and it's supposed to be even longer than the prior one. So it's actually going to be feature film length, almost 90 minutes or something like that.
It's going to be nice because one thing I struggled with, although I do enjoy the show, I couldn't get over the fact it's Barney and G-Man's Magical Space Adventure. The characters are well-known characters in another game series, which made it a bit difficult to suspend disbelief. But Clear Skies 4, I think, is going to help that a lot by having, I think they're custom modeled characters. I don't
I'm
recognize
pretty
them.
sure it is. And he's also got this new feature with lip sync tracking and all that stuff. So it's going to be a lot easier to get these things working.
It's really a shame, and I'm not saying anything bad about CCP. Well, I mean, it's his creative right to do it, but I mean, CCP does have the whole sort of walking in stations thing, like somewhat developed. Like, why is Clear Skies 4 not in that? You know what I mean? With like actual ship models that CCP have built to put in those hangars, could they not have helped them out?
Well,
Maybe
they
want help.
they did actually help him out in the sense of they provided the software that CCP used to make trailers. CCP have a piece of software that this brings me to something else I'm going to raise.
He was using the tool called Jessica. The point is, I think what Brula was trying to point out, he should have had a copy of, was it CCP Burger's hard drive that allegedly has an entire working version of Walking in Stations on it?
I mean, there might be
believe so.
reasons. There might be reasons. Like, it might not be appropriate for what he wants to do. You know what I mean? It might not be enough background stuff made, but all the ships was there. Like remember, you could get your ship and like walk up to your ship. But maybe it wouldn't be helpful. I was just saying, like, you think he's doing it on another engine? Could he not have done it in that engine? Would that not have helped? Because I know the ships are built. You don't have to build nothing.
Yes and no. He, as I say, he has the Eve tool to do the sort of outside space shots, but it would be a massive effort to get CCP to essentially make make their Walking in Stations characters work with a completely separate animation engine, etc., etc. Like the tooling there would be a lot of work, far more than you can expect for a little project.
And part of the reason is the sofa inside Walking Stations is not red. That's very important.
Side note, does anyone remember Eve Probe? And is that still a thing that works? It was a scriptable engine that CCP released during a fan fest, I believe, that allowed you to basically write your own scripts and then play them back in the Eve engine. I was wondering if that's still a thing. I'd love for that to still be a thing.
Right?
Yeah, it was for testing purposes, but you could also arguably film things with it.
So you did mention that it's about 2 years out for Clear Skies 4, and he's not doing any fundraisers because he wants to he doesn't want to be beholden to a timetable. He's going to do it as quickly as he can based on all of his other real life commitments.
Does he have any kind of like support website or anything like that, just so if like anybody would be inclined to throw him some, some love, or is he just completely like off the grid in that
He
way?
kind of insisted not to get support, even though I think that he might actually change his opinion on that, or I kind of hope that he does, because the community seems to be very inclined to throw some money at him, even if it's just beer money and chump change. So I hope he opens something.
I mean, he did like in the Q&A. He did basically say that although he appreciates a lot of the goodwill and support kind of thing, he didn't want it's to turn into something that he does for money. That he wants to do it for the love of doing it and for the fans.
But the argument then is it's to make his wife happy, right? Because he also mentioned that his wife was a little bit miffed at the fact that he was planning on spending a few thousand on hardware, right? So at least we could cover that. So we could avoid him having a wife aggro.
But when you throw money into the mix, you now have expectations, and that's not what he wants. I think that's the main driver behind it. If the EVE community raises X $1,000, and now he feels he's got that weight over his head that he has to make something that's worth X $1,000, and will feel terrible if he doesn't achieve that.
Doesn't he just have to put on his Chris Roberts hat? Too soon?
I doubt his wife would allow that amount of hookers and blow. Allegedly.
If it feels like he's being obligated to something, he just needs to go to Star Citizen's website and see how much money is thrown at that with no obligation.
Like $500 million. What have you got to show? Nothing much.
Well, you can't fly first class because of quarantine. Even your hookers and blow 6 feet apart. I don't know,
guys.
Not so fun.
What was Matarol's third subject? Because we've covered the mining changes. We've covered the Clear Skies, the Clear Skies 4 announcement. What else was on the list?
We were supposed to get really to tease us all with how awesome the trailer is and that he's under NDA and can't actually share any information on what's in it.
Well, we know there's an avatar in it, and we know it's out on April the 2nd. Beyond that, we don't have a whole lot of information.
No, but apparently it sounds like we are in for a lot of nice surprises. I think really said we were going to be doing postmortem and picking that apart in the media for the next weeks. So it's going to be very exciting to see what's coming out. And I do hope that we're getting a first April joke, maybe even a bad trailer. That's actually a very disappointing thing. So everyone thinks it's the right one, and it's not the right one.
I really hope it's like an animated paint kind of trailer.
Like boat art.
One thing that someone's just reminded me of in the Twitch chat, and I remember seeing earlier today, the skins for FanFest are starting to drop. They've started emailing people who had FanFest tickets, and they should now be getting their rewards for doing so.
Nice.
I'm not sure what the skins are, though.
One of the things is, like, from that trailer, though, we definitely saw that there was like a, obviously an avatar redesign. And that redesign looked very much along the lines of, centralizing the idea of the avatar around, the Doomsday.
That's an interesting point.
Do you think
the front hanger looks more like a weapon instead of like a shuttle bay now, or not a shuttle bay, like whatever sort of bay.
It now looks like the it now looks like the sort of like the EVE equivalent of like the the laser barrel or the super weapon barrel of the Death Star.
Just for a second, I need to put on my tinfoil hat. But I can't remember which CCP it was, but one of them mentioned that yes, it could fire the beam straight forward, but they've also set up the model to fire the beam out the back and look sensible. Does anyone else find that sounding like you have to align before you can fire?
I don't know. Maybe the beam kind of arcs.
Kind of a bendy beam.
I just really hope that the trailer contains Rise's solution to making the Drake great again by making it a fire ship that has this bomb on it.
hey, we can root and bend plasma with magnets and stuff. So
Well, I think we can
look,
expect lots of pretty stuff at the very least.
if
Oh,
if
yeah,
the
hopefully.
Star Wars Death Star can put 6 beams together to make one big beam, we can do it.
But the point being, if you're talking about realism and stuff, if you fired like a laser in space, unless you were being hit by it, you wouldn't actually see it, would you? Because there's no
now
like refraction. Light
don't go.
travels in one direction.
I
So if
don't
you were
think we
stood
need
at the side of
to.
the laser,
I don't think we
wanna go
need
down
to
that
go
route.
into physics.
Well, and
There's a-
space is not as clean as you think.
yeah.
I think
I'd like to
I heard
know.
a physicist actually say that if you look at it on a relative scale, well, in the stellar pocket, it's a little bit uh, empty. But once you look at it on a relative scale, it's actually as more in common with milk than with water when it comes to how transparent it is.
Oh, we see
I
that a lot.
watched that astronaut, and he went outside the space station, and they were saying when they go out in their space in their spacesuits and they come back in, they stink. Like space smells bad. Like in the vicinity of the space station, it does anyway. Like there's stuff that the suit gathers, and then there's like a whiff to the suit when it comes out, and it's nothing to do with the suit. It's like he's flying by there at like whatever speed, and they're picking stuff up. You know what I mean, on the outside of the suit. But that's like in a low Earth
I've
orbit.
never heard that. That is so wild.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the Russian space station when they flush.
Somebody asked them you know how they have those Q&As, you can Google it, and I can tell you what you Google, what does space smell like, and everyone's like, oh, what a dumb question. And then
Raspberries.
anyway, like this, yeah, well, that astronaut, I think is it not Chris Hemsworth or so? I can't remember.
Well,
And he's like,
there's
actually, space does smell distinctive. Like our spacesuits really smell when we come back inside.
a particular nebula that's made out of some particular chemical. I can't remember the name of, but it's a major flavor component in raspberries. So space tastes like raspberry.
At least over there.
Yeah, you're in the raspberry quarter.
I mean, we've been in space and going to space, and there's probably a lot of there's probably a decent amount of human excrement in that's not low orbit, that's high orbit. So we may be contributing to that, but I don't know.
Well, they're
But I
not
think
Space poop.
spraying it out, are they? It's
Well, yeah.
compacted.
No,
Is it
it
sprayed
depends.
out?
It
So there's
depends
literally
on.
shit.
How
it
did we get
it
into space
depends.
poop? I'm kind of
Well-
confused.
Well, because you talked about the smell of space, so yeah, it depends on the mission. Like the Apollo missions, most of it was vented. In the what do you call it? In the ISS, yeah. I mean, I don't know what they do with solid, but I know they do recycle liquid waste. I think it's compacted in jettison. That's probably
Back
what it is.
in virtual space stuff that fortunately doesn't involve space poop. Apparently, there's been some strange story-based stuff going on with Triglavian. Just trying to get our dear friend Fonsui, who knows a lot more about this than I do, to come join us and explain what on earth is going on. Oh, there he
He's
is.
here.
Yeah, there's stuff going on. There's some scary things. Very we really don't know which way to jump on this. A couple of weeks ago, a colony disappeared entirely out of nowhere, down to the molecule. Not a bacterium, not a virus left. Colony completely gone. Everybody thought they had been vaporized by the Triglavians. A couple weeks later, which was a couple of days ago, there was a news report, which I will link in a moment, or in a minute when I find it, that talks about how they reappeared, seemingly out of nowhere, on a planet that is extremely harsh and inhospitable to human life, inside a Triglavian structure guarded by Triglavian combat drones. It's pretty scary. Give me just a moment, and I will look up the news article.
Would this be related to the rumors I've heard of potential new Triglavian space, whether that means they're going to
Massive
be a bit
space,
more
right?
incursioning.
It sounds like we're getting a lot of space. If the whole concept of second quadrant makes sense, it potentially means a lot of space, right?
Well, are we still in Eve Invasion?
We are in Invasion Chapter 2, and what we suspect and believe very strongly is that on April 2nd, this Thursday, we will get the announcement of Chapter 3, which I'll get to at the end of this. But I'll quickly read the article from March 26th, 4 days ago, or at least the first part of the article that refers to what I'm talking about. The headline says, Galactic Hour News Roundup, a Jaglavian Mystery and Minmatar Politics Heat Up. Scope's Galactic Hour with Rhett Gloriax brings an exclusive account of a Triglavian mystery in Cinq Liaisons, news of political strife in the Republic, and our usual summary of other news from around New Eden. Exclusive: authorities mystified as population of SMS-3 town discovered in Triglavian environmental facility, quote-unquote, on Goinard 2. The Scope's Galactic Hour with Rhett Gloriax can exclusively reveal that the population of the town of New Concept on SMS-3 are alive and apparently reasonably well. After detecting strange signals emanating from the storm world of Goinard 2, Concord's Aegis division discovered a bizarre environment maintained on the rocky surface of that inhospitable planet. Within the heavily protected environment were the population of a new concept colony, so recently believed to have been reduced to their constituent molecules by a Triglavian raid on the 8th of March. While intrepid reporter Rhett Gloriax of the Scope's Galactic Hour with Rhett Gloriax was unable to gain access to the strange environment or interview the fortunate survivors of New Concept, it was possible to secure an exclusive interview with Aegis Provost Marshal Cassia Valkanir. It should be noted that this interview was only granted after Marshal Valkanir had assured herself that the situation in the Goinard system was secure following unusual Triglavian activity in space and on the surface of Goinard 2. Quote, I am afraid that the operational secrecy requirements mean that I cannot reveal too much to you, Sierra Gloriax, but I can say that all inhabitants of New Concept SMS-3 that are in the records available to us were found in the Triglavian facility on the surface of Goinard 2. The nature of that facility? Clearly some form of experimental environment. The structure itself was considerably hardened against the storms of Goinard 2 and guarded by Triglavian combat drones. More than that I cannot say at this time. Our operation to secure the facility and the inhabitants of New Concept was a complete success. They are now safe in Aegis custody. Motivations of the Triglavians? It is not my role to speculate, Sir Gloriax. I am a soldier charged with organizing major elements of the defense of New Eden. Our forces responded to a threat and by good grace were able to save lives thought lost. Are they all completely unharmed? I can't say that, I'm afraid, and I'm unwilling to discuss the individual cases. Suffice to say that Triglavian methods of intelligence gathering can be taxing to the subject. We've seen this sort of thing before on a smaller scale. Yes, I'd say the Triglavians are adapting their approach as the invasion campaign continues. They remain a dire threat to New Eden. Thank you, Sir Gloriax. That will have to be enough. End quote. The Scope's Galactic Hour threat Gloriax wishes to note that a combined force of Capsuleers cleared the Goinard system of a substantial Triglavian scouting force during the time Aegis and Concord forces were apparently carrying out operations on Goinard 2. Other sources available to investigative reporter Rhett Gloriax have suggested that Aegis has secured a number of similar facilities elsewhere in New Eden. The Scope has also been told that captured civilians and military are almost certainly being tested in various ways by the Triglavians. One source has claimed that Triglavians are, quote, biologically adapting, unquote, some prisoners to various environments. The Scope's Galactic Hour with Rhett Gloriax will continue to pursue the truth and publish it for all citizens of New Eden. This is some scary stuff, folks.
But that sounds like planets, right?
Oh yeah, there was they abducted a colony down to the molecule, moved it to a new planet that humans could not survive on, built an environmental facility, and guarded it with drones, and modified the people inside biologically. We don't know if they're attempting to modify people so that they can survive in Abyss, or if they're attempting to test on people so that they can modify themselves to survive here. We have no idea. So that was the news article. And then in the Pulse video, the most recent Pulse video, there was an image shown, and the image was a inhospitable planet, and on the surface of the planet was walking a female figure wearing a Triglavian bioadaptive suit, and in the foreground was a rock outcropping that had clearly been modified by entropic energies, glowing red.
put on your tinfoil hats. Do you have that image ready somewhere, Quantum?
It's everywhere. Hang on, let me see if I can find it.
Like you said, with the planets, it's sounding very ground-like, very
Well,
ground troop-like. So that's
this is where I'm hoping it's Nova time, baby. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like
It sounds a little bit too
So-
early for that, right? Because they folded all of that into the new MMO avatar-based project, right? So
Well, they didn't
that would
explicitly
be
say
very
that.
early for. Well, they kind of did when Ratati moved. That's kind of what was mentioned in some of the old Dust forums and stuff. That it was
Yep.
completely slated and folded into the London project.
Yeah, whatever is happening in London is using whatever Nova had done. They may discard some of it, they may discard all of it, but anything that was developed for Nova is being rolled into whatever the new unnamed project in London is. Ash Therathi has theorized that they would not announce the shuttering of the Nova codename without having something new ready, even if they weren't necessarily ready to share it with us. So he suspects that we're going to find that announcement around FanFest time, which is coming up. And that would have obviously
the
been a
trailer
FanFest
seems to be
announcement.
kind of taking over for at least some of the stuff that would have been expected at FanFest, right? I don't know if they're going to announce some sort of virtual version of the FanFest content, but maybe the trailer is going to be the only thing, and then devblogs and potential small streams. I don't know, but this is definitely one of those, right? So I could see that this could also be some sort of weird PI on tablet thing.
Yep, there's no telling where they're going to go with this, but we will find out on Thursday when this trailer is released. It is almost definitely the announcement of Chapter 3 of the Invasion.
so. Speaking of mobile, do any of you guys know what's happening with the planned game that was announced at FanFest? That was kind of like is that's not Echoes, right? The Echoes is the Chinese server coming back up, right?
No, Echoes
No,
is
So
no,
that's-
Echoes is a
Echo-
standalone.
Echoes is
Okay,
mobile,
standalone.
an entirely different game. Serenity is the Chinese server coming back, which I believe is back now, yes?
Yep, it's back now.
And
It interestingly
and
had a weird
preserved
second
state,
currency.
yes? Yeah, I saw you mention that, the second currency, but from what I understand, the assets and currency and skill points and characters and everything were left precisely in place.
Yes, everything has been restored. There is kind of a quirk of the Chinese server in the way. It's a sort of a side fact, but they introduced this new currency. It's called Gex or something like that, which is basically Aurum. But mechanically, all it does is you purchase with your cash these blue tokens, which then you turn those into Plex. These blue tokens are not like Plex in the sense of you can put them into your ship and move them around. It's almost entirely to get around Chinese laws, where if you were to blow up my ship and take my Plex, you have actually stolen real money from me, so I have legal recourse against you. By adding that layer of having to buy these blue tokens in the first place, the blue tokens have cash value, but when you convert them to Plex, they no longer have cash value. It's a weird workaround to enable the Chinese to deal with their law.
And is RMT still sanctioned on that server? As in, you can actually sell your in-game items, but there's like an exchange. Does that still exist? Because that was a thing on Serenity for a while, right? Towards the end, you could actually sell ISK, but you had to give a cut to the operators. Is that still a feature on Serenity?
I've seen pictures and heard of such a thing, but I've never actually seen it for myself. I've never had it confirmed by a player whether that's a thing. I know that
Yeah, there
botting
was-
apparently is tolerable.
There was a
Well, there's
an
a new
image
sheriff in
of
town.
yeah, there was an image of literally a way of converting Plex to actual current like Chinese currency, but considering that they're now considering the loopholes that they've had to like jump like the hoops that they've had to jump through in order to get Plex to be usable in game, like I doubt there would be, you know, that easier transfer of in-game currency to real currency?
No, they did it because they know, like, right, it just that's just the way things were there. Like, they
Yeah,
were
but
like,
they didn't
we're
have
not going to stop
plex.
RMT here. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to sanction it, but we're going to take a cut of it, basically. Like that's what they did. That's what they did. But I just wondered if that was still the same thing what they were doing.
No idea,
But
I'm afraid.
So you guys talking about the Chinese server, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, because okay, so in China things work differently. RMT is not just legal for Eve; it's legal for all gaming. Okay, that's why Eve also has RMT in China, only on Serenity, because that's how they do it over there. It's not just. It's not just for Eve. It's all games that work like that.
we'll see. Like I
There's
understand that, and
actually
I
there's
appreciate
actually a
that.
common company that hosts the RMT over there. I don't know the names, but the way it works is you can actually go into another game that has nothing to do with Eve, farm, convert the RMT currency, and then pop into Eve and transfer it into Eve if you want to. Because that's how they work. It's one company that controls everything when it comes to RMT.
That would explain a lot because that new pseudoplex that they introduced was called apparently Galactic Yuan or something like that. However you
Yeah,
pronounce the
so
currency.
yeah.
Quantum yuan.
That's it.
So they even have like you can even like over there in China, you can play on Serenity, farm with your bots all day, transfer the RMT currency into whatever it's called. I don't know the names, by the way. And then you go into World of Warcraft, you bring your RMT currency with you, and you can use it in World of Warcraft.
Okay.
Because it's one company that controls all the RMT scene over there.
So they've kind of partnered with this other company basically, and now they're buying into this standard currency that the currency itself is giving some kind of intrinsic value, and that's why you would want to use it. And also, like
It,
they were saying, kind of getting around maybe regulation or whatever.
it sounds like end stage corruption, frankly. Like the Eve economy relies on it being isolated from the real world. Like it has to grow on its own without that kind of without the money going out, without real money going out. And in
Yeah,
such a
yeah,
system, it's just broken.
I couldn't
yeah.
envisage it, even if I was Chinese, I could not envisage playing on Tranquility and then wanting to go back to Serenity. Because it is a different league. It's basically a different league. You've got Tranquility, and like for me and the rest of the world's in this. It's like the Premier League of EVE Online, and then you've got Serenity, which is like Chinese Little League, and like you might be top dog on Serenity, but no one gives a hoot here. You know what I mean? Like,
They did
There's
once
there's
upon a
no
time.
You're
well,
gonna
it
bring the
appears that Serenity simply does not allow room for gameplay or skill to emerge. It's just clobber. It's
yeah,
bots
yeah, yeah.
and force, and that's it.
Well,
It's
the
the pay
the
to
the
win.
the reason.
It's the pay to win thing that we keep bringing up, right? Like in our Western kind of thinking, the pay to win for us is gold ammo, right? It's buying advantage without actually working for it, right? That's pay to win. But in for them in China, it's completely normal. That's how it works, right? Because they farm with bots. Like even botting is allowed, so you can just stay 24 hours AFK doing other things and completely farming and farming and farming, and then you transfer those funds through that Chinese company that controls all the RMT. You transfer the virtual currency into real currency, and then you use the real currency in whatever the hell you want in real life.
And all
Well,
this
that's
serves to do is fully homogenize the gameplay across all
Yeah,
games,
yeah,
because
yeah,
when all the gameplay in all the games is just bot or just farm or just buy
yeah,
your way in, then all games are the same. There's no skill, there's no emergent gameplay, there's nothing.
yeah. And if you try to play legit, you're not even competitive. It's game over. Don't even try it. You are forced to use bots to be competitive. That's why an 30 days Omega over there costs 20 billion or whatever the hell it is right now. I don't even remember how much it is right now. It's around 20
Yeah.
bill. It's 22 or 23 or whatever. Because the money is so, it has no value. It has absolutely no value,
Yeah,
because of
because
botting.
the ISK faucets are fully insufficient to keep up with the economy, if a player is not botting. If it is a human
Exactly, yeah.
operating the ISK faucets, then a human can only pull so much out of that faucet, but a bot can pull way, way more. And if everyone's botting and everyone's pulling that much out of the faucet, then people will never be able to keep up and will never be able to be actually playing the game in
Got
any
it.
sort of skillful manner.
All right, that's Serenity botting and the pitfalls. But let's move on to something else.
I had
I always,
something else on there, but
Oh, you do, McLeod? What do you got?
oh, it was to do with this sort of intermediary currency, because even if the people who are in charge of like the new Serenity server or control, sort of basically like running the Serenity server, like even if they prohibited people from using bots, the fact that they have this intermediary currency that is essentially a way to input your bot, input botted
Bot in another
currency
game.
from other games, it basically just means that like people will bot on other games and then bring that into Serenity.
One other thing, like
Anyway,
to
that was
add
just
as well.
that's what I had.
You tricked me.
One other thing I'd be worried if I was a Chinese player and I was playing on Tranquility, right? And the Chinese have en masse come over to Tranquility, and they've been pushing hard and they've been making a name for themselves. And some people would say they've been doing that by botting a lot, and then maybe CCP's like they punished some alliances by setting massive negative wallets, banning a bunch of bots. And at the end of the day, okay, they're welcome here because this is the only place they could have played Eve. But now a lot of them must be thinking, we better be careful now because you know what'll end up happening? They won't just ban us, like temp ban us. They'll be saying, no, you've got your own server now, and actually we've leased that. We've leased our product to this Chinese company, and by actually allowing you to play on TQ, you know what I mean? That's I'd be
Curious.
worried if I
Yeah.
was a Chinese player. Like if you were pushing and you started to wind CCP Iceland up, they might say, you know what, you've got your own server, we're sending you back there because we're going to we'll get your player hours and we'll get your money off you, maybe not directly to the corporation that runs Tranquility, but we'll pitch you back to our partners in China. Whereas before they didn't have that option, they could ban people, and yeah, you're welcome. You're not welcome. You shouldn't be creating more accounts if you're banned, but they're going to let them. Now they got their own playground, so they might be thinking if we misbehave and keep trashing Tranquility, we might end up back on Serenity.
Gotcha. Thanks for that point. Let's move on from Chinese server and botting issue and go back to the quadrant one. Quadrant 2 is coming up. You guys talked about the significance of the beginning of a new quadrant. This is kind of the first time we've seen a quadrant end and a new one begin.
Well, they tend to have themes, right?
Yeah, so this quadrant was PvP themed. We saw low sec love, and I think that the next quadrant is going to be more likely PvE themed in some manner or another. That means balance or content or both.
Ponce, didn't that you make a great point. The last one seemed to be PvP low sec oriented. Even faction war was in there, right? And some mineral redistribution. It seems to me like the last quadrant was whatever was on the CSM's mind. Not to pick a fight, but it doesn't seem like it was a very, very player-driven agenda.
Just because it's something that all the players wanted doesn't mean it was the players' agenda. Maybe CCP just knew what the players wanted
In advance anyway. But it does seem like it was fixing things.
Yeah, and these are
With
things
a couple
that
exceptions.
the player base as a whole agreed were healthy changes for a long.
Yeah, and also there was a couple exceptions, right? Like the Battleship Bay was new; nobody had asked for that, and the filaments were what people liked, but that was inventive as well. It wasn't invented by players. You saw some war deck fixes in there, but for the most part, this seemed to me to be hitting all the concern areas for players.
That should make you happy, Madroll, right? This is changes that are not necessarily discussed by players, but CCP are insisting to bring in, right? Same with, I've heard so many players say, there's too much space, why not just remove systems? Like, that's going to destroy the game, and it looks as if Quadrant 2 is more space, CCP is doing the exact opposite of what some people have actually claimed.
I would sincerely doubt that there's new space coming. I don't think. I think
nobody's
exactly
saying that.
The right.
Nobody's saying there will be. They're saying that they didn't do what the players wanted. But here's the thing: they also beat the crap out of wormholes. It seems like.
Well, is this not an extension of the Fix the Stupid?
No, this was for
Hence the
advanced
fixing
players.
little issues.
Fix the Stupid is for basic players, the ones coming in and all the stupid things that keep them out of the game because they get stuck. All the stuff that
The
the last quarter was about wasn't.
The market changes were quite big. Maybe not big to like the general population of E, but to the actual people involved in markets, it's been quite massive changes. Really, the
It
new
was a
broker
big
fees.
move for the vast majority of players in Eve.
Yeah,
Before buy orders were kind of a joke. Now, if you're not skilled into it, you should be using buy orders, because if you're not, you're making even less money.
But again, another cleaning or fixing or upgrading or rethinking a little bit.
Yeah.
Only a couple
Well-
new things. But this new quarter, this is what I wanted to get to. That was last quarter. This new quarter, quarter two, seems like it has fiction written all over it.
Does sound like it's going to be story heavy, especially with that picture.
Yeah, and so they said that it's the Quadrant trailer. So obviously, Invasion Chapter 3, I think, is going to be a large component of it. I don't think it's going to be the entire thing. There will be other content as well.
There's a car honking at you.
I think it was a text. on his
Yeah,
phone.
I normally turn off the buzz on my phone when I'm there. That's off.
Where's the law going? You mentioned it was going to be heavily Triglavian themed.
Yeah, so
I don't know. We will see.
Yeah, we have those news articles that point to colonies being transported entirely, environmental structures being constructed to see if they can make the people survive, people being biologically, modified to fit these environments, and reports that time this has happened, this is just the first time that we found out about it. And then to cap it all off, we get that image of a Triglavian bioadaptive suited female figure walking on a planet. I don't know if the fact that it's a female figure is significant in any way, but the physical figure that represents Zoria Triglav is female as well. So it is possible that this entity that is responsible for essentially the invasion itself, the detached executive troika for sublimation of Pashlas Flow, which is the long name for Zoria Triglav, is being represented in that image.
I think I'm still going to say that my suspicion is that it smells of a new PI feature,
So
potentially on the tablet.
Ash is predicting a PI overhaul as well. I don't know. We'll see.
It's just a low-hanging fruit and something that's been discussed a while, and it's still too early times for the MMO stuff, in my opinion.
One of the aspects of the DED loot, the DED LP, that has been brought up a lot is that it seems to point to being not permanent. So we could see a potentiality for a permanent Triglavian LP store.
That's what I
Just
was.
as a
yeah,
potential.
So
That-
there's a piece of this that we haven't quite talked about today, and that is we talked about it in the past. This is something that slipped, was not supposed to be released to Singularity, and that was the two names of entirely new factions that we'll be able to gain standings with. And that is the Allied Empire Conglomerate and the quote-unquote test faction for Trig standing.
Yeah. So this could be the establishment of. We could start seeing a push towards the establishment of, Triglavian LP store, Triglavian quote unquote faction and structures, and perhaps a removal of the of many of the bonuses in the LP store for DD.
and it almost seems. Oh, good.
No, and just I was going to say the potential changing or alteration of invasion content.
You know
It
how you had
almost-
the Empire, You know the mission, the recent thing that you could take one gate to join the Empire side and one side to
The Dreadnought.
to
Yeah, the Dreadnought side.
Could you ever imagine like a situation where there's two filaments, right? And one filament, or maybe it's not controlled by the filaments, but it's controlled by you actually selecting a faction. And you go into the abyssal space, and not only is the PvP aspect there, and also you know how currently you go in abyssal space, you do the PvE, and then you go to the PvP arena. Maybe you just go in at the same time, and then it's like PvE is occurring, and you got one capsuleer who's trying to steer the PvE in favor of the Triglavs and one in favor of the Empire or this other faction that you just mentioned there. And like, I don't know, I just feel like that might be coming soon.
So when I speak about these things, when I say that this is happening or this was said, like I have a source that I can point to. I am very, very cagey as far as predictions. I will read the tea leaves, I will report what I find and what I see, and I'll point to the source for it. But I will absolutely never guess as to where they're going unless there's direct evidence of something. So what you described is something that who knows? Maybe they do it, maybe they don't. It is entirely pie in the sky, and I refuse to go beyond the material that has been published.
Oh yeah,
If
that
you-
was a guess. That
sounds-
was a complete guess by me. Like I have no evidence for that. That's just something I was just thinking. Like,
But the
And it's
context and the narrative of the lore, it sounds like it's got something very clearly to do with planets and about porting some people from one location to another. That sounds like an obvious PI related topic. I can't see why you would write it like that if it's not.
I would write it like that if it had nothing to do with PI. That is pure story. I'm not saying it has nothing to do with planetary stuff. I have no information on that. What I do know is that if I were writing the story of the Triglavians as I know it so far, if I had to write this next little bit, this is what I'd be doing. The description of the Stellar Accelerator, which was a site that was added in Chapter 2, which we've been in for several months now. The description of that site is that they are attempting to link those stars to their conduit network permanently, either to pull, to link it so that they can get out, or to possibly pull the entire solar system into the abyss. We know that in the past they talk about a quoted phrase is the ancient domains were lost to us. That these we suspect very strongly that these individuals are former Jovians. We suspect very strongly that these are the modifiers. There's a lot of tinfoil regarding this. I'm not really willing to go further because it's pure speculation. But the fact that they're messing with people, messing with stars, messing with planets, messing with environments, messing with going between layers of reality, space and subspace, this can be entirely encapsulated within a lore context without actually looking at planetary mechanics. But again, you may be right.
Well, terrestrial infrastructure has a lot farther reaching um, interactions than just with PI. I mean, we have pirate factions and the Empire factions and the Null factions that already have some kind of influence. Really, not the Null factions in the lore because that's all player generated. I don't think anything's ever been put together there. But what I was trying to say was that it seems like this could almost be like a third pole in standings if they go with it. As in, they may not be changing like security standings, but what I mean is more like inner, what is it? Inner, what's the word? Like inner faction standings, kind of like because you have the Empire and then you have the pirates, and if they're adding Triglavians and maybe they'll end up adding more than one um unified group of them. It could be something where it has some different impact in the game, but also has this mechanical difference where it kind of splits up where you have to put your loyalties when it comes to who and the factions that are in the game.
There's actually quite a bit of precedent for player activity and player story informing the lore. As we saw, we just watched Clear Skies the other day. Every single Tempest ship in the game says Clear Skies on the side. Juliana Soter, a player, is running for the Galente presidency in game. There's 10 other things I can think of that they have put. The Amar Minmatar faction war, the players had decided to collude with each other, and the war zone was essentially ineffective as a war zone. And the Sarum family, the lore began reacting to this and giving the players directives. There is quite a long tradition of this.
Yeah, that's one of those things that goes under the radar, I suppose, for the majority of players, is how much the story actually does interact with the game.
Yep. Arataka Research Consortium and Pi have both been attacked on multiple occasions by NPCs. Specifically, Pi was doing a fob, Blood Raider fob, and they had like a whole pile of dreads dropped on them, piloted by developers and GMs. Arc has had Triglavians attack their structures directly when they were not doing that to anybody else.
Well, see, these are the kind of things where it's like there's always this talk about, like where are resources being allocated, but these are the kind of things that if you take all that stuff out of the world is not nearly as rich and interesting. And some people would say, well, that's not really, like financially, what do you call it, efficient, but it's kind of like the area where, well, where does IP end up being actually like sales and marketing oriented versus brand oriented? Like
You
all
know,
this stuff is brand building.
but people, I dislike when people say that about, like, like they said the same about walking stations. Like, this is a lot, developer time's been squandered. This isn't what people's skills don't overlap that much. It's not like Eve Online has to employ artists. You know what I mean? Like, we need artists to design our ships and stuff like that. And it's not like when they start developing other things like walking in stations, like you can't tell them to go program, fix pause code, because he's not a programmer, he's an artist, and you can't, like, you don't have him sitting around doing nothing the whole day. And same with the lore writers and some of the other staff members. Like, some people might say, well, I'm not interested in role playing in Eve Online, such and such. But those people that are committing to that, like CCP is putting resources into it, they're not being wasted, because those people that are employed for other parts that are vital to the game can't do other things. You know what I mean? And same with the people who are doing writing code, they can't draw a spaceship. You know what I mean?
Well, and like I said, it's brand versus marketing. It's like the brand is a long term thing, and if they are putting this effort in, and part of it is because, well, they don't have a high priority, like high pipeline oriented work. That's just adding to the depth of what's being created, and that potentially has some over, what do you call it, like some crosstalk between what players are doing and what is happening in the game. it's
A
it's very significant.
a flavorless universe is not fun for players to create their stories in. To some degree or another, it is in the end up to us to create the stories that will be remembered. But CCP is going to do their darndest to provide us the tools and the setting to do so. And I feel that they are really stepping it up. And the current Precursor Crisis story is really bringing a lot of stuff together. It's bringing together the drifters and the rogue drones and the sleepers and these new precursors that we'd never heard of before, but are probably Jovians. And they're tying up some loose ends that have been hanging for a decade or more.
Villy, you're here.
Yeah,
Can you give us some hype for the trailer?
it's really good.
That works. April the 2nd, right? The new
Thursday.
Quadrant Taylor.
He sounds so tired because he's been watching the trailer non-stop. He actually hasn't been sleeping.
I just have one question for Villy then. Is it the Shiznits?
I don't know. I don't know how to describe the shiznits, but it's pretty good.
Villy saying it's pretty good means it's probably amazing.
Yeah, it's probably accurate.
I can tell that you've got your CSM translation device working.
Well, I can't say what it is, but I can say it's awesome. Like,
Village, do you feel CCP stepping up, due to the real world crisis that's on, and they've kind of got a captive audience in computer games, one of the few markets that are probably expected to increase their turnover during the time. Do you feel there's any additional movement, or nope?
nope.
Nope.
All this stuff is stuff that's been in the works for months.
Well, they did say on CCP's TV stream the other day that they are coping surprisingly well with the working from home situation due to the virus.
Computer
don't think
nerds
we
on
can
computers
expect-
being able to survive well when nobody can talk to each other. What a surprise!
Yeah, well, I don't think we can expect any delays, but I'm sure if there is sort of delays on things that were expected, it's more than fair to forgive them. Everyone's having trouble right now.
Yeah, I didn't even realize. I just realized that myself. Like they're gonna have problems with development, but I was just thinking like interactive like computer games and like home media. They must be having a field day on their profits, because there must be so many more people buying Plex because they're all stuck inside, and not just Plex. Like I mean, every single online game and MMO, and also like your Netflix and stuff. Their subscriptions must be like through the roof at the minute.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the only foil to that is it's not going to be direct because there's a lot of uncertainty. So then that's going to make people a little bit more conservative with their money. But there's multiple effect, or what do you call it, multiple effects happening at the same time. So, but yeah, I would think that there would be a net positive in a lot of anything that has to do with with groups doing things remote.
I do think that CCP has stepped up their game significantly, specifically the community team. They have been out and about. They have been all over the place. Convict is everywhere, absolutely everywhere. Aurora is hitting the ground running. These people are going out of their way to keep us entertained and to keep us distracted and to keep us in New Eden and out of the world infected with coronavirus.
Saving the world one spaceship at a time.
Right. All right. So you guys been going for hour 15. You got anything else you want to cover?
I just think that uptick definitely looks like a potential COVID-19 thing.
You're referring to the looks like we're almost at a 30,000 average, very nearly daily players. Whereas a few weeks ago it was
climbing quite nicely since
it's 28K.
A few weeks back it was in the 25-26 range on a weekly average.
This is peaking, but this is Sunday, so that's the high point of the week. Saturday, Sunday, but it's 37K. That's pretty good.
And you got to remember, we coming out of winter, which is the peak for even as we hit spring and summer. That's the low trough for online games because obviously people are out enjoying the sun, but not anymore.
Yeah, you could see now on screen the COVID bump. That's terrible.
You need 3 months to really see that there's a nice growth for the last 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, there's
more players are always welcome.
And that's a big average. That's not just big spikes. So it doesn't mean that people are all getting on at a certain time. It looks like a tidal shift where it's every time zone is more populated.
So we have a choice, right? Because in summer we would have expected it to flatten and even dip a little bit. So either it's because CCP are making the game so much better that people are coming back, or new people are actually coming and trying it, or it's the COVID quarantine effect. Take your pick.
I think
Both
it's column
positive.
A, column B.
Yeah.
If you look at the past year, new players are steadily up, and that must be the Korean entrance, maybe.
So we saw the Korean entrance, and then we saw a sharp drop after that. And now we are at a point where we normally see a drop again. And instead of seeing a drop, we're seeing a rise, which is particularly heartening.
Here's an interesting point. Today, we hit 37,968, which is 3 higher than 2019's all-time high.
Did anyone else get the special deal? Like a month's subscription?
Can't hear you. Saren, can't hear you.
Were you talking about the 3 months? There was a deal of, I think it was 3 months of Omega plus 3 months of multi-character training. I think that was the last.
Yeah, and now there's another deal that may still be available now that is for discounted Omega and extractors.
And let's just be clear: if they do a logging campaign right now, they could probably break some records for the last decade.
The last Singularity dump had reference to a new login campaign in it.
Oh,
I
really?
would
Okay.
expect to see. Yeah, I would expect to see a login campaign within the next few weekends.
At CC, please.
Yeah, looking at these numbers, the peak is at 16 to 1800. That's European time zone for new accounts.
Well, yeah, because they're weeks ahead of where we are in the America when it comes to what's happening in the world.
We're talking about tranquility.
Yeah, he said
that's
Europe's
what I
ahead
mean.
of America in terms of isolation of due to COVID. You know what I mean? It's kind of
I see.
it's not complete lockdown, but you're in the UK at the minute. There's you can go outside, but they're kind of like pressuring you not to do that, like to stay inside.
Well, we've been locked down in California for 2 weeks.
Did we talk about clear skies today at all?
Yeah, that was the second topic. Do you have anything to add to it?
No, if you already covered it.
Honestly, I only just forgot how good it was. That's the only thing I'll say about Clear Sky.
But now that you mention it, since somebody has said the word clear skies again, oh my God, it's clear skies, guys, clear skies. It's just number
All right, settle down.
Keep it together.
It's not that good.
Ian Chisholm said years.
But for something that was made like 10 years ago, you guys certainly have stood a good amount of the test of time.
Well,
that was
did you
probably
see
the most surprising thing.
It stands the test of time because it's a good story.
Caleb,
first and foremost.
Caleb, you were mentioning the old gate effects when you used to jump. He was saying it looked like somebody was backspace deleting you.
I see Clear Skies having a couple of draws. One is that it's an excellent story and the production values are high. The voice acting is quite good. The characters are actually compelling. It's different because it is not the story of capsuleers. It is the story of baseliners just doing their thing. It is regular people flying their spaceships and just barely getting by. They're not these immortal space angels that we are. They have real stakes, and death is death. So there's that draw, and then there's the nostalgia draw because it has all the old ship models and all the old this and all the things that used to be
planets, old moons.
Yeah. So people see these things and it brings the warm fuzzies. So it still resonates today because the story is still good and still enjoyable to watch, and the acting and the production values are good. And at the same time, it draws in the people that don't even care necessarily about the story and just want to see the game as it was. It's a museum piece.
Yeah, it is interesting to see the old graphics and compare it to the new. It's like a completely different game, but I kind of miss the old game because it had more flavor as far as I could tell. The new stuff looks a lot more like variants off the same species almost.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Specifically in Clear Skies, we were looking at a stealth bomber that used the same model as the Kestrel and now does not. Now they have unique models, which is precisely the opposite of what you were describing.
Very rare ship change. Yeah, you're right.
But
we
that's
also
one
at the moment
specific example.
also at the moment we do have Triglavian ships as well. And we didn't have that back then.
And those are thoroughly alien.
Yeah.
Right, but everything, because the graphics require it, became symmetrical. Whatever's on the left-hand side when you look at it straight on is on the right-hand side. It's symmetrical. Whereas before you had a lot more
I'm sorry, have you seen any Galente ship ever?
Well, some of the Galente redesigns have looked a little bit more symmetrical.
Most of the redesigns have made asymmetrical ships symmetrical.
Yeah, that's because it saves on resources. It's just a waste to do those asymmetrical ones.
I think if you look carefully, none of the ships in the game are symmetrical. They're all asymmetrical in little ways.
Maybe small little details. The cool thing is they do have animations now that I don't think they had back then.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I'm thinking more in terms of portraits and flavoring and diversity of characterization and that sort of stuff is something I kind of miss.
I mean, yeah, like the old style portraits were very distinctive to Eve. Like, but you can't say that the level of different or distinctive kind of capability between one player and another player like isn't there with the new portraits. Like you can, it's just the overall general style of the new portrait, the new sort of portraits are
they're all the same model
less
maker.
distinctive than the old.
Maybe the clothes separate them, a few little ethnic details, but nothing extravagant. I think what happened is when they started making the game, they built in a lot of IP, basically. And then they figured out, oh, well, it's emergent gameplay. The people that play it make it what it is. So we don't need to put in a lot of effort into this, backstory or flavoring or distinction between empires to make you pick a loyalty and to play it at all. It's people are going to buck that anyway. They're going to go from multiple different empires and form their own alliance, and that's what they care about. But I don't know.
There's actually
So
talk of improving the Empire selection. I don't know if this is something that's going to happen or not, but this is something that was discussed amongst the devs. They were talking
Yeah, but they're
about
talking about getting
new
rid of it.
characters. No, they're talking about creating new characters without an Empire affiliation. And right now, you're a new player. You know nothing about EVE Online. You sign up for an account, you install the game client, and you're asked to create a character. And all you get is a couple of sentence blurb about, well, these guys are like this, and those guys are like that, and these ones look like this, and those ones, and that's it. That's all you get, and your decision is made before you ever fly a ship. And all you want to do is get in and fly a ship. So maybe you read through it and care and agonize, or maybe you don't. But if the Empire affiliation is selected after the Capsuleer is created, then that actually is a meaningful decision.
But everybody advises you that it doesn't matter. Players that play are like, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter for a long
doesn't
like
matter,
after
but
a period of time, but like I think everybody when they started playing Eve, they genuinely really thought that the faction that you joined mattered in some way, shape,
it did
or form.
matter. It did matter. That was the problem. It did have a profound effect in the old days because and before they made the character skill changes, there's a reason there's more Caldari characters in the game than anyone else, and the two reasons being one because of Jira, because people read guides on Eve Online and they find out about Jira and the benefits of creating a Caldari character means you're right in Jira right away and you can do your skill injectors and stuff. So that's still prevalent to this day. And in the past, the Caldari character had the best skill map because before
Missiles Master Race.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, there was a Missile Master Race thing. There was also a thing at around the time of Red Moon Rising that they added a new kind of
Asian race, right?
A new race, and that had like a whole bunch of different skills that like I think some skills even at level 5 at one point.
If you wanted to shoot stuff, the Caldari was definitely what you wanted to start out as. If you wanted to do anything else, mostly Galente, to be honest.
I've always thought that it was very weird in these games that you had to make such complex decisions before you even start playing the. I would think that the best thing to do is to throw somebody in as a no portrait. That all they have to do is come up with a name. They can come into the game. They can experience the gameplay, and then when it's appropriate for them, when they've queued up a bunch of skills where it's like, well, I don't really want to go out and do anything right now until these skills are done. So that gives them the time to be like, okay, what it's like, what do I want to look like?
But everyone knew
of
that you could get everything back then. It was not like you felt that you were locked off from something. It's just that it gave you a head start in a specific direction depending on how you build your character. It was very obvious, and they made a big deal of explaining that everything is open all the time to all characters. Then there was the weird thing with racial lockout in corp creation, which was a little bit annoying, but that didn't really have anything to do with character creation. It was just how you comprised your corp.
You'll
The
find like that's the thing, like, and it's different. There is a bit of fashion involved in it. There's a bit of like generation, uh, like when you look at some characters' names, like you look at them and they've all got sort of lore-based names. Like a lot of guys have got lore-based names, but then like you notice like second or third characters and PvP characters, they don't. They pick completely on, like, you know what I mean. Then you start to get like maybe Villy's name, you know what I mean? He doesn't need to, you know what I mean? He's not got a surname in it, but and there's other characters who've got, you know, like completely unlore related names, but because that's not their first character, and they get it, and you see that quite a lot. You find a lot of these second characters are all Caldari characters because the first thing you want to do is get into Jita, or you know what I mean, get organized, get your skill injectors now, like, and
You
that's
just
a bit
can't use
sad.
that argument from day one because Jeter was not a thing at day one.
Oh no, yeah, not at day one. Like, but I'm not at day one,
But
but for a
there
long
came a
time it
point
has
when
been.
that became the standard.
Oh yeah, post Jeter, definitely. When Jeter grew up
I just
after the destruction of the highways and stuff, Jeter was king. If you wanted to get fast in and start doing mission grinding and stuff, sure, Jeter was the thing. But it was still very flavor based back then because we still had a lot of RP guys and well, something like Minmatar and the whole racism and slavery and stuff like that drama. That was very much a thing too, and the
Come-
gay lente and the multicolored flag.
How come there's no white
It's-
slaves?
there are.
Yeah, historically, there's a bunch of white slaves.
You can
Yeah.
be a white Mimiton
Not in
now.
space.
I mean,
I don't think it's a
isn't
readily
the
available option.
isn't the slave icon like kind of nondescriptly kind of middle tone?
No, Minmatar have darker skin, don't they?
Well,
We'll get
there
in-
was always a
get into that next
fifth
time.
race plan.
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean,
just saying
only the
Roman
brutes are-
slaves were like German, I think, weren't they?
Well, I don't think you can easily do a one-on-one racial argument there because their mythology is very much Norse and their skill complexion is very much dark. So you're going to end up in some sort of mishmash of how you are discussing the Minotaur.
Yeah, Romans had slaves from all different places they conquered, and their slaves weren't lifetime slaves. They were
The richest man in Rome was a slave. Their civil service was all slaves. Well, for a long time.
Yeah, you could.
But I guess what I'm getting at is just like, yeah, well, I get kind of like the faction and the race thing too, because like, you know, we were still coming out of the era of like EverQuest and that kind of thing, to where it's like, but it just doesn't seem to make as much of a difference when you have a classless game. Like
Well-
in a game like EverQuest, you picked a race sometimes because you wanted to play a certain class, or you wanted to start in a certain place. Like, you know, I get that thing about, you know, Kaldaris and Cheetahs and stuff, but nowadays it doesn't it makes sense more to like maybe drop people off and kind of like, okay, well, here are the different places that you can start. And you don't have any kind of faction identity or anything when you first come in, because it's not important to figuring out what you want to do in the game, and then you can read up about things or go to certain parts of space or whatever and figure out who you want to affiliate with and who you identify with.
It's just bad for the RP because one of the things about RP is before you know anything else, when you've just read the superficial lore, people start behaving in that whole "I'm an elf, so I hate you because you're a dwarf." No reason except for I'm supposed to do that. And it's the same in EVE Online. In the old lore, you had some sort of basic incentive to behave in a certain way when you were role playing. So you had that call it beginner's backstory that you could then elaborate on, and that was kind of lost when it started being flattened, and people didn't really choose based on benefits, right? Because then they just basically chose from looks and not necessarily even from lore.
One thing that absolutely trashed like regional variation and made Jira an even more like Jira started and then became, you know, they changed the highways and then Jira became the center for trade. One thing that absolutely smashed like Ren's and definitely Ren's was the hardest hit, Dodixie and Heck to some extent, and less Amar because it's so close to Jira, was when they introduced Citadel tethering, because now you can jump in a jump freighter to a citadel and get to your nullsec area or get to your lowsec area, and you can hit mid to Jira. But before Citadels, you had to do it on stations, and it was quite hard to die, but you could die. And actually jumping your jump freighter to random NPC stations was always a bit risky, and you would try to tone it down. So some of these like people who are farming out in Null or shopping to bring stuff to Null, they would visit the likes of Heck and Rens because it was one less jump away or a couple of jumps away from Jira. But now you don't care. You always go to Jira because you can jump your jump freighters completely risk free as long as you're using established tethered citadels. They don't have to be fueled to tether, so you're completely invulnerable. So there's no reason to visit the Dixie if you're going to from nullsec, whereas before there was a reason.
Hopefully, the market changes will reduce the that incentive to only use Jita and will create more reason for people to go elsewhere.
It won't. There's no reason whatsoever not to use Jita, unless you're like trying to feed a level 4 mission running market or some of the Sisters of Eve
Right,
ones,
and
or
those
maybe the
markets will
Cosmo. There's no
become
reason not to go to Jita. You
yeah.
would
Though
like if you're in nullsec, you would never say like I'm going to go to Heck to pick stuff up, and that used to be a thing. Like people used to go
Ren's.
to
They
the
used to go to
regional
Ren's.
market,
yeah,
Ren's,
that is
Heck,
the
or
current.
Dodixie or Amar.
Yeah, if you
Yeah,
lived
that
in
is the world that we know. What we are hoping is that the market changes will revitalize other markets elsewhere because again, market positions get taken up and it behooves individual marketeers who are serious to go and take up positions in other markets where they're not taken yet. And I suspect that this will be seen first in the former market hubs that are now
It won't.
dilapidated.
No chance. The people that are running the market hubs currently, Mogul and I choose you or ICY. I forgot
Mhm.
how he wants to be called. They're supported by they're not. I'm not saying that it's the same on the same level as the test trade tower and perimeter, but if you try to set up a market, one jump from Heck, one jump from Rens, and one jump from the Dixie, which would be Botane, you would get your market smashed in unless you fixed your rates percent higher than those established traders. And if you set your rate even 1% higher than the established trader, no one would use your hub. You are not going to break into those hubs without massive support, like null block support. Maybe pirate, but okay, not a chance.
Well, if you want one, just fight for it.
Oh yeah, for sure, Billy. Yeah, but I'm just saying, you're not going to allow that. Like,
But I mean, just
well,
saying fight for it is kind
Test,
of.
I know for sure, has specifically said we have no intentions on any other market aside from the Forge. And I'm
yeah,
sorry on the fact that we haven't left. Like, one high sec region is more than enough to keep us busy.
Oh yeah, the high sec region. Of course, you're not interested.
So what happened to all the like Tech 1 slap fighting that was going on for a while when the markets were getting
People got
established off
bored, I think. They didn't
Okay.
like fighting in
'Cause
those T1.
Well, it was like there's no. When it comes to high sec, there's no tactical elements to it. It's literally like 300 Feroxes versus 300 Feroxes. Like both sides tried to innovate a little, but like there's like
You're pretty limited.
like there's no AoE weapons. There's extremely limited like options for like a variety of things. Like you're just smashing 300 Feroxes into 300 Feroxes. So it's who can build more Feroxes and put pilots in the seats. And we sat there for 3 or 4 hours, multiple days, just like killing each other's Feroxes. And like everybody's like, oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. And it was for like the first battle or two, but after like the fourth or fifth, it was like,
what are we doing?
yeah, like this is kind of shitty and boring.
So
Because
Amar
well-
says here in chat that doesn't Test have a market in Amar?
No, so that is operated by someone that's not, although they have they put it under the same alliance.
Yeah, Test made.
Do they divide their
agreements
profit with you
people.
though?
I don't know.
Are you conveniently forgetting things?
That's bullshit. He knows. They do.
No,
Cat's out of the
he may
bag,
not.
boys. Get your Amar market together.
the one thing that kind of sucked for you, Billy, was the Citadel spam in the Forge, wasn't it? Because it only costs say like a billion esque to drop whatever it is, and Asbel's the cheapest one, and
They
then
were about
another
4.
billion esque. Yeah. It's not
They're
a lot
like
of
3.5. They're like
effort.
3.5, 4 billion, dude.
Yeah, they varied between 3.5 to 4.5, and plus the bill for the market. So yeah, yeah. Though I mean, it was annoying.
It was like 4 or
but
5 billion.
That's what I said. Yeah. So it was annoying, but like, it was just part of the business, I guess. Since long before we did it, we
Oh
put up.
yeah, they've gone right up in value. Back, yeah, a year ago it was, yeah. That's quite more expensive than I thought.
I mean, it's kind of just I would think that it's just how things are going to go to where, if you have a major market hub near a traditional major market hub where most of the traffic is, I mean, if you're not null supported, you're probably not going to be able to last because,
I don't know. I think if like we saw a lot of dogged like it's people underestimate how effective dogged determination. So if you're willing to, put a tower down, like, how do I put this? Because Cable can kind of describe it because he's one of those people where he's very, determined and is willing to play the long game, I guess. But like, you can wear a larger force down very effectively if you're willing to put the time and effort in. It's just most groups aren't willing to do that, right? Like,
Unless you have a member on the CSM.
What do you mean?
I'm kidding you, Billy.
Oof.
Because Cable's complaint is that
Matterhorn's throwing punches? Hold on, what is
Test
this?
CSM membership has allowed them to change the rules against his gameplay. It's a
I
joke.
will be honest with you right now. I had zero to do with this change when it comes to the market stuff. Like, zero.
Oh no! I don't think he's referring to the market stuff though at all.
Oh,
I'm referring
the
to
Sodio stuff.
Yeah, Sotios.
Probably, yeah.
I'm glad to see it fixed, is what I'll say.
I mean, let me. For that comment, I must ask you. Well, Billy, how much Sotio has Tess gotten so far since the change?
I have no idea.
0.
No triggering, Cable. You can't trigger like that.
Well, he's asking something I don't track. So if he says
I'm
0,
just-
I'll take it for 0. But guess what? I've had multiple smaller groups who have messaged me and said, "Thank you, this is a great change. It allowed us to fund our alliance because we were able to get the loot from the Sodio owners."
I'm very interested in hearing which groups that was because I'm pretty sure I have an eye on at least 90% of the Sotios of the game.
It's also not just Test though. You also have Horde has an interest.
Of course. But I mean, other major groups have agreements with guarding all the Sotios in their space.
So I got a quick question.
And all Sotios in general.
For the big boys in the room that have a lot of manpower. What do you think is kind of like the critical mass that you would have to reach with your corporation if you were somebody that was playing in high sec to actually put out a structure and be able to start kind of start very small, but be able to hopefully at some point get to a place where you can call a little piece of space your own. And in high sec, it's not going to be just your own, but as
one man, you jump a structure. It's a bit. You can put a structure down very easily. To remove that structure is really quite annoying. It's like 3 timers. You put a structure down, it won't get bashed for no reason. Like,
depends on where it is.
Yeah, if you jump at it like right outside Jira, then yeah, it's going to get bashed because there's just opportunists. But there's hundreds of abandoned structures all over HiSec. They're not worth. There's nothing in it for the people attacking you unless they think you're going to pay a ransom. And if you defend it, if you even gun it with one character, it's difficult to get rid of. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's just annoying. It's just like, who wants to do that?
Right.
If you put a structure down, no one will.
Aside from the one-man stuff, what would be your answer as the suggested size?
Remove asset safety.
I mean,
Sorry.
So this is kind of it's more of a complex question than I wanted it to be. It's more just like, okay, how many people does it make sense to, you have your corporation, you guys go out and do things, mission PvP, some industry, maybe you have kind of like a general corporation, and you're building up those seeds of actually having something bigger, maybe an alliance in the future. Like, what is
25 to 50?
Yeah.
25 to 50 is where you should start considering getting into a structure. As long as you just don't place it too close to someone that might actually have an issue with that, and then build stuff up. Because you should be in a profitability range if you have a 25 to 50 man group that even if it gets destroyed, you can recuperate and pretty much throw down a new one very easily. Maybe move it to a different location,
Right.
but you should be able to tank the losses. So I'd say
So,
about 25.
well, like the question is, you're putting up a structure to make money as like a market hub, is my understanding?
Well, it's more of a general question. It's just like, okay, we have enough manpower and we have enough what do you call it, like spread in our vulnerability periods to where if somebody was going to try and knock us over, that we'd be able to put up some kind of resistance. Like basically it's a question about like when is it time with when you're a high sec guy, and you're trying to build a group that's doing things and you have somewhat of a focus. When is the time to say, okay, now we're gonna step into being a what do you call it, structure holding entity instead of just a kind of nameless non-structure holding entity.
As much as I hate to say it, it's whenever you're ready. Like it's not like a numbers game; it's a mental game. Most people have said like it takes one guy, and the reality is it doesn't take much. Like if you can drop a Fortizar, it's quite a force multiplier. You fit it right, etc. And then the question is, are you able to hold it against people who are gonna come after you? And then the question is, why would they come after you? And it's just, it's there's 100 factors that can affect all those decisions.
Right. The reason that I'm kind of asking the question is because it's like this is kind of one of my personal areas of interest is like, the ecosystem of that was kind of, in my opinion, broken for a while with the old Wordex system. I think that this structure based is a great change to let people kind of get off the ground. And I was just wondering, really, I'm kind of asking the question because it's like I want people to have a little bit of an idea of what the thinking is from people that have gone through this or went through it in a different way a long time ago. So that's
It's,
just
it's,
why.
it's about it's about the factors that really was kind of mentioning that it's a multifactorial thing, right? I gave you a number that's based on how resilient you are, right? If you have 25 to 50 people, getting jumped on does not hurt that much. If you have less, it might mean that it's kind of a painful loss and a big nuisance. If you have 25 to 50, it's almost like it is an issue, but it's not a non-issue. So you can kind of get back in there fairly quick. I think that's when we're talking about risk and risk averse play styles. You need to be able to somehow tank any losses but still feel them. That's a balance that you always need in this game, in my opinion. If you are never taking any risk, you're going to get bored and you're not going to be progressing and feeling that progress. So you always want to lie on the edge and ideally actually get pushed over it, right?
It's what we call the shakes, right?
Yeah,
Like when you
exactly.
start fighting and you don't feel the shakes anymore, then the game has no meaning for you. But when you're fighting and your hands are shaking, your heart is pounding in your chest because you know that if you lose that ship, it's gonna be a big hit for you. That's when you feel the adrenaline rushing, and that's what Eve is. That's the real Eve.
One of the good things about the newest market change with the one that's inspired the Tranquility Trading Tower to put down to 1% is you get you're getting a percentage of the broker fee changes now. Every time someone changes their order, you're getting a cut now, aren't you, Villy?
Say again, sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Now, before the changes, your cut from the broker fee was quite small, but now whenever, like, say, I change a price of an item, I've got to pay another broker fee. As you as the Citadel owner get a cut of that now, don't you?
It
I don't actually know the answer to that, to be honest.
Because
the profitability for test or for Trinket Training Tower is the same. It's just that the other half of it now goes to to what's it, to Concord or whatever the fuck it
He's
was.
talking about the order adjustments. I'm not sure.
Oh,
Because before when I
The
ordered,
order
when I
adjustments
before,
is a flat tax that's just removed from the game.
yeah, right.
It's not a
ah,
thing.
I think so too. Yeah.
so the
I-
structure owner doesn't get a cut of that.
No.
no, so like
Uh,
we're pretty close to where we were before. Let me just look. Jeez. Yeah, it doesn't. It's just people putting stuff up.
Because I was going to say,
I was like, could somebody make a transaction? I'll see. And I looked at the time. It's like in the last minute, there's been 4 pages of transactions. It's like, oh boy, that wouldn't work. I don't think so.
no, yeah, because it's a shame that I was thinking if they'd done that, because I was looking now, this broker fee change, it really changes my playstyle, and I was thinking I'm going to put down a Citadel structure of my own because it's costing me too much to do the broker fee changes. But if I'm not going to get a cut of that, I'm not inclined to do that, which is a shame that the Citadel owner doesn't get a cut of that sales tax. That would make Citadels really worth fighting over, market hub Citadels.
You mean the broker tax?
Yeah, the market order, everything's changed. The names have all
Then it's
changed.
because you said sales tax, because that they do get a cut of.
They get a cut of the sales tax, but they don't get a cut of the broker fee
That's
change.
correct.
Like basically, so when I change my order, the Citadel owner doesn't get a cut of that.
No,
That's a
that
shame.
just goes out of the game. I mean,
Oh,
that's
that is a
fair.
shame. I don't know if they got a cut of that. That would make Citadels
Not
a
like
lot
they
more
need
interesting.
more money from the
No.
fucking Citadels. Hello?
I would actually prefer it
Actually,
if they kept
now that I think
increasing
about
the
it, yeah, we should definitely make that an issue.
Fuck off.
tax.
Terrible idea.
No.
Yeah, it might be. It might be. He's already rich, but
So this isn't something that's changed how you do business on markets. It's something that's changed. Am I gonna put up a market of my own?
What, the broker fee?
Well, like the changes that we're talking about with the
The market changes change the way that you place orders, and also don't really
the
change the way
market
that you do
patch has
market.
fundamentally changed the way people interact with the market and perform
But
the
as far as
trader.
setting up orders or setting up a market, I mean, yeah, I guess that does impact it, regardless of who you are. But if you're the one, it depends. By market, do you mean structure, or by market, do you mean actually being the marketeers setting the order? Because if it's the person setting the orders, yes, they're heavily impacted. If it's the person setting up the structure, not really.
I don't know. I would argue that the person setting up the structure, they're competitive. Like right now, there's no way to undercut us like they're used. So it creates a situation where there's a different dynamic in terms of the competitive scene of setting up a structure for a market now than there used to be.
I mean, I don't even know what the tax was for TTT.
It was
But
0.5,
0.5, yeah.
and now it's 1, which means we're exactly the same except you're paying the same tax again to.
One of the few things that came up. One of the few things that came up like very quickly was just this race to 0.1, and it was basically day one from that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, no real room for cutting people under. I mean, you can't go further than 0.1.
I tell you, it's had a real negative effect on some supplies. Like I'll give you this one now, if anyone's listening. The cheapest heatsink, T2, so like a really common T2 item heatsink. So for all your laser gunships, is the cheapest one on Jira Market's 15 million ISK, and that's an item that's got like a trade volume
But
of 2,000 a day. You know what I mean? And there's
but
none
that's
left.
not
Just
due to
sounds like a
markets.
market
That's literally just somebody manipulating.
Yeah, that's not normal. I am not looking at the chart, but I bet if you did, you wouldn't see that it's been that way for a while. It's probably someone screwing with it.
No, well, I
Someone
mean,
bought
it's
up
me.
all the
I've got the
heatsinks and
cheapest orders on, and I've not screwed with it. So there's no one screwing with that. Because
Well,
if
if you
somebody
put a
was screwing
heatsink up
with it,
for 15 mil, you're
Well-
playing into the, market manipulation.
One, it's actually harder to fight against the market manipulation because the race to the bottom is actually far more costly than it was before. And two, an actual market manipulation is an actual market manipulation now. So, yeah, it's probably going to be like this until somebody decides that they want to cut a really big loss into their, if the loss is actually worth the amount that they're losing, or I guess volume worth the losses.
So is this does the cut that the NPCs get, does it scale with your cut? I maybe it might not be relevant since everybody's trying to hit bottom anyway. But like, if you
If we
had
went to 1.2, would it go 0.6, 0.6, you mean?
yes,
I don't actually know the answer to that.
Isn't it half of whatever is set up?
It may very well be. I'm not.
That's what
Sure.
That's what I understood from the patch notes, is that it's half of whatever is on the. So yeah, 0.1 is because 0.5, so that the TTT maintains its cash flow.
All right. Got to wrap up. I want to thank you guys for.
Dunk in chat actually just said there's a new Devblog from the ecosystem team.
Ooh, right now?
Is there?
Oh, wow. Right when we're about to end. 1 second.
Yeah, Dunk comes in right at the end.
Oh, yeah, it's this one.
Damn it, Dunk.
Can I get a link? Voice chat will do.
I got it.
Oop. Okay.
It's in the Evelings channel.
Wabam.
By Bradati's kind of group.
So and from the patch notes, it does say that even modifying an order, half of it goes to the NPC or to the structure owner.
I mean, if it does, great.
Yeah.
Something you gotta remember.
So you get 50 ISK.
Excellent. I like
Good
it.
job.
With that being said, I don't think it's a substantial amount of money, but I'm not actually.
So to any of the big market guys in the room while Matterall's putting that together, I mean, is there really, and unless you're is there really any reason to 0.01 ISK, on small quantities?
You can't
yeah.
anymore. Well,
Okay.
No, you
depending
still
on
can on anything that is worth like 1,000 ISK. Yeah. Is it 1,000? No, it's like 100 ISK. Anything up to like 900 ISK, you can 0.01 or 999, I guess.
Well, what's the new smallest increment then on things?
It's 4 significant digits. So as soon as you hit 1,000, you can only move by 0.1.
Oh, okay. See, this is the problem with me being a vacationer. I haven't actually played since the market changes went in, so I used to do a little bit of market stuff, but yeah, it was just seemed like whenever you did anything, you'd have somebody point one I don't know, like 1,000 units back on something that doesn't move that much. It's just like it didn't seem like it was really worth it unless you want to sit at your console all day or be a bad boy and bought it.
and bought it, yeah. And people said it wouldn't have effect against bottom, but the point that I was making about like really common items like your bog standard Tech 2 like meat, like like meat and 2 veg modules that sell 3,000 units a day in Jita, there's none on the market at the minute. Like where have all these bots gone? I think this change has had quite a big effect on
All right.
a lot of even the most bog standard modules.
Thanks, guys. We got to break away in 5 to 10 minutes. I'm going to have Fonsway read this devlog just came out, and then we'll discuss it tomorrow. Fonsway?
Oh boy, this is a long one. Let's go.
Yeah, you got 7 minutes.
All right, I had to change to voice actor for this because otherwise I'd be holding my thumb down for like the whole time. Abundance breeds complacency and scarcity breeds war. Predictable inputs lead to stagnant outputs. Autarky is anathema to free trade. Dear Capsuleers, everyone has a vested interest in the health of the EVE ecosystem. Since 2019, much effort has been put into strengthening the foundation of the ecosystem. As a result, one of the key victories is that ISK generated by botting has reduced by 80%. In 2019, during the biggest actions against botting, there was a noticeable reduction in concurrent player numbers. Now, concurrency is more than fully recovered, but instead of bots, we have a host of genuine new players taking their first steps in EVE alongside returning veterans. A substantial portion of the EVE development team is working hard on embracing these new players, and significant headway has been made, which will be discussed at a later time. And in addition, a consistent cadence of updates has been established, focused on core gameplay, resulting in a more dynamic metagame/balance. There is work ahead and continued progress to be made. In this blog, you will find information on what the road ahead looks like for the EVE ecosystem. Number one, the ecosystem segment. The ecosystem segment was formed during the reorganization of EVE development in Q4 2019, and given the responsibility of monitoring and aligning all balance, progression, economy, and other health-related features from a macroeconomic perspective. Bullet point one, mission: to continuously regulate the unique ecosystem of EVE Online in order to provide a fair and vibrant playground full of diverse and rewarding opportunities for all players. Bullet point two, vision: all EVE Online players are deeply engaged in a universe full of non-repetitive activities with intuitive risk/reward ratios while not competing with cheaters. Bullet point three, goals: increase veteran engagement through nurturing conflict, improve economic health and opportunity through updates to resource and risk distribution, severely impact cheating through prevention, detection, and enforcement. The quarterly player survey. The quarterly player survey asks players to agree or disagree with topic statements so that they can be prioritized and addressed. Here are some of the topics with lowest approval ratings and therefore the highest priority. Cheating/abusing mechanics topics by frequency. Botting, highest ranked problem in the survey. 0.01 isking, account hacking and safety, and real money trading. Equality of opportunity by negative ranking. The balance between risk/effort and reward in EVE Online is healthy. Wealth/power distribution and inequality between individuals and groups. The rich get richer. There's a healthy turnover of wealth, power, and sovereign space territory in the game. Super capital umbrella. There are good opportunities for new players to become successful in the game. Number two, the EVE ecosystem health and prognosis. The current health of the ecosystem can be measured across these three main categories, and they have each been assigned a simple health state: AAA, A, B, C, and D, and a trend: improving, stable, and worsening. A handful of health indices have also been defined to guide the prioritization and focus while listening to the community. It is a complex and challenging situation that is being managed, and decisive action will be taken to benefit the long term health of the ecosystem. There's an image here that describes a couple of these things. So, the last and current state between AAA, A, B, C, and D, the projected trend, and recent actions. So, one category is balance and progression. The last and current state are both C. The projected trend is improving, and recent actions include Titan Haw removal and boson application nerf, support fighter updates for carriers and supercarriers, regular weapon and ship balance updates, which we've seen throughout the quadrant, module tiericide restarted. We've seen a number of module groups tiericided and improved. We're about to see the shield resist modules, the active shield resist modules get tiericided. That's currently on Singularity, has not made it to Tranquility, and faction implants. We've seen saviors, we've seen nirvanas. There are others on the slate that are coming. Second category, economy and industry. Last and current state, both D. projected trend improving. Recent actions taken or scarcity phase started. Faction warfare loyalty point mission payouts and incursion payout rules. Last category, cheating and abuse. Last state D, current state B. Projected trend improving. Recent actions, drifter AI changes, broker relations, and new detection tools for cheating. Actions and directives. A long term roadmap has been established, taking into account community and CSM input, and the following changes will be implemented in the coming months: Ecosystem Health Index, Macro Equilibrium Index, a level PvP playing field where there is an intuitive and interesting escalation path from subcapital to super capital, which features clearer counters and more options. Hard counters and weaknesses and escalation paths are bullet points in this section. The Reward Index. What makes EVE so interesting is that PvP risk is inherent across almost all activities on top of the PvE risk of each activity. While efforts are made to ensure that the rewards are in line with the risks, it is clear that this balance is not achieved in many areas. We will take stock of all PvE and resource gathering and work to align risk reward. Bullet points in this section include high reward, low risk, and high impact, low effort. Upcoming actions: address the proliferation and survivability of capitals and supercapitals with a number of key changes. Address damage and damage application issues for supercapitals and capitals to help define their roles. Continue to iterate on subcapital balance. And upcoming actions for the reward index include align payouts of certain outlier PvE activities. I can only guess as to what they mean by that, and add elements of risk or commitment to certain outlier activities. I'm not sure what these outlier activities are, but in the in the darkest, deepest part of my heart, I hope that they make Resource Wars worthwhile, because right now it's literally a money loss, and it's good content if the rewards were good and they wanted to play it. Next image. Ecosystem Health Index, Conflict Index. Another desire is to add conflict drivers through the distribution/availability of resources/activities. In doing so, we would distribute the universe population so that there is less empty space and fewer overpopulated, guarded, and safe systems. This will lead to increased trade, movement, and conflict. Bullet points in this section include population distribution and negative feedback loops. Upcoming actions related to this under moons. Remove almost all T1 moon minerals from normal and wormhole moons. Add new uses for some T2 moon minerals. Add new uses for some wormhole and planetary resources. And structure asset safety changes are upcoming. I think has this been formally committed to until this point? I don't think this has been formally committed to until this point. I think that they buried it super deep. They put it in an image. It's not even text. You can't even search for this. But there it is, buried right in the middle of the blog. Asset safety changes.
Welcome
Unless
to
someone can
wormhole,
tell me,
bitches.
Wow.
unless someone can tell me this has been said until now, this is the very first time I've seen these words stated by CCP as a thing that they are doing.
It's a Talking Stations exclusive, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, well, diversity index, fueling a responsive metagame through the introduction of new options and or rebalancing existing ones across a variety of playstyles and activities, both in PvE and PvP. Bullet points in this section include introduce new options, balance existing options. Upcoming actions related to this, module tier side, ship and module balance, new ships, modules, and capabilities. Section 3, this is the third of 4 sections. As announced recently, New Eden is entering a period where resource distribution is being rebalanced. It has been decided in cooperation with the CSM to give an update on how and why this decision was made. As detailed above, it was concluded that the economy of EVE is in an unsustainable state. A healthy economic environment where players can find opportunities by making interesting choices is the goal. One of the key pillars of EVE is that loss has meaning, and a state is being reached where loss is not meaningful anymore for veteran players. It is imperative both for EVE's success and for the well-being of its inhabitants that the economy resides within a healthy state. Defining that is a massive undertaking, as the quote unquote healthy state is not static. It changes constantly, depending on numerous variables such as the number of participants, number of players, and their profession, type of gameplay. If global income is represented as a line in the image below, it can be seen that there is an equilibrium changes slowly, where there is a healthy state, and at the moment it is much too far to the right on this line, close to higher income. Higher income as opposed to a healthy state. Waiting longer to address this imbalance will mean a worsening of the situation. Therefore, a bold plan is being put in motion so that even more drastic measures are not required in the future. The 3 phases of that plan and their respective goals in the resource distribution process are as follows. Number 1, shortage phase. The main goal of the shortage phase is to get the economy to the left side of the healthy state on the income line. Even though it is a moving target, there is confidence that the data and tools to evaluate the situation and then move on to the second phase are in hand. To be clear, what they're referring to here is they want the economy to be on the low income side of the healthy state. It is currently unhealthy on the high income side. They want it to be unhealthy on the low income side, and then eventually reset to the healthy state. Redistribution phase, which we have not yet reached. In this phase, the location of the healthy range limits will be declared, and then the necessary changes to place the income within that range will be made. As it is not a static state, there are many moving parts and attributes that establish this range and their relative contribution. Number 3, dynamic distribution phase. With the findings of the redistribution phase, it will be possible to create a dynamic system that self-regulates and adjusts accordingly based on player inputs and universe outputs. There's an image that describes this below. Phase 1, shortage, identify the current state. Output. Phase 2, redistribution, identify the limits of the healthy range under the current state. Identify the system variables that affect the limits. Phase 3, dynamic distribution, create a dynamic system that adjusts rewards and distribution on the fly according to systemic variables. Section 4, final section. Anti-cheating. At CCP, the trifecta of cheating is defined as account hacking, illegal task automation, aka botting and input broadcasting, and fraud, credit card theft. According to the quarterly player survey, botting remains the key issue for a large majority of players because it is the most visible to players of all cheating methods. However, all cheating undermines the hard work of honest players, and real money traded ISK is supplied through all of these 3 avenues. Therefore, all must join forces and stop buying illegal ISK and not condone any botting. Since a task force was created almost a year ago, a real and measurable win in the war on bots has been reached. For security reasons, the details on how this was achieved cannot be divulged here, but investigation tools have been improved, and there are plenty of further ideas to implement. There is a zero tolerance policy on bots, and until that goal is reached, no one will rest. Player reporting has been a huge success because of the positive feedback loop implemented last year, where everyone who reported a character that ended up getting banned got a thank you email. In many cases, it has not been possible to turn these around within a single day. Keep those reports coming, and remember, no one is banned on reports alone. And this is my own editorializing on this. This is something that they mentioned and described in a Vegas presentation. Player reports act as a multiplier, a modifier on the metrics that CCP collects themselves. So you can report someone, it will do absolutely nothing unless that person does something shady on their own. So if a player with a lot of reports on them does something shady, that is then magnified and brought to the top of the list, and the security team will look at it. If someone does something shady and there's no reports on them, they may not make it to the top of the list. Back to reading. Even though visible botting still exists, you can rest assured that the combined effect of the strategy of high-value targeting and organization takedowns has reduced the impact of botting on the ecosystem by 80% since the same time last year. This includes both the number of suspected botters and the wealth generated by botters. Since the same time last year, there has been great success in eliminating thousands of accounts over last year. This is noticeable in the server load, especially during the blackout, which seemed to have struck a crippling blow to botters who consequently left the game in droves. Since then, the player population has swelled while botter numbers continue to decrease. Conclusion. We have began a huge undertaking with a lot of moving parts and hope that the above sheds some light on our plans and initiatives. We are completely aware that these changes are part of the greater EVE ecosystem and we need to act with care. We are confident that the work ahead will lead to a healthy ecosystem for everyone where player choices matter and loss has meaning. Fly safe.
Nice work, Fonsui, everybody. Hope you're all
Mission
applauding.
accomplished.
Applauding at home. That was a lot longer than I thought it was. Some good stuff there. We should probably take it on after we read it a couple times and digest it. But initial thoughts, Fonsui, you first.
I read that so fast.
Didn't digest anything.
No, I did. I think I got. Well, oh man, there was a couple of things in there.
Asset safety.
Asset safety is what stands out. Asset safety is what stands out there. But I would like to say that I and others have been saying again and again and again, as people complain, every time something is removed and scarcity is added, people are like, well, what am I going to do now? What am I going to do now? What am I going to do now? I'm like, wait, that's what you're going to do now. Sit back and relax. Everything is being reset to zero. Up is down, black is white, left is right, cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria. Don't worry about it. Let them do their work. They need to take the stuff out. They need to see where the pain points are, and then they need to go and iterate on that and collect their data and put in the changes. So it's really nice that they're stating this in black and white or blue and white in this case. Right. And the asset safety stuff is super exciting.
All right, we'll take this on, but we're going to take it on a different time. We've got to cut this off. I got to go to a meeting. Thank you guys, everyone, for sticking around. Thank you, Fonsui, for reading that. The EVE Online ecosystem, that's what we'll take on next time. But for now, we're going to raid. Should we raid Corvus? Anybody know who that is?
Corvusonzo. Is it? I imagine he's back in the Caldari seat now. He had to leave the war for a day so that he could do that event with Rise and Convict and Aurora and Dopamine. But I think he's back at it.
Well, we'll check
spoiled for choice, man. Hateless, Corvus,
Hateless
Tammy,
is on? Oh.
Andy is on too.
Torvald is on.
I know, there's a lot of good people.
Spoiled for choice, man.
Go anywhere you want, guys.
Pick a number.
Maybe we won't rate. No, we already did. All right, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks very much.